Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we are going to be talking about yet another important question that we've already talked about regarding another quarterback, but we need to address it regarding this quarterback as well. And that question is, will the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trade for Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson? And I am not alone in this video today. Joining me for the first time ever here on the channel is my colleague from the Locked On Bucs podcast and writer for BucsNation.com, James Yarko. James, how you doing, man?
I am great. It's cool to be on. I'm excited. I'm glad to have you as part of the Bucs Nation team. I was real excited when Gil texted me and he said, "Hey, do you know who these guys are?" And I'm like, "Heck yeah, we got James. That's great." So yeah, stoked to have you as part of the team, and yeah, excited to talk about the potential of a certain quarterback who can cook in Tampa.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, me and James, we've talked a few times. We've hung out at a couple of Bucs practices, and now we're making this video today. So, definitely go check out the Locked On Bucs podcast. Go subscribe to them. Link to that will be down in the pinned comment down in the comment section below. But James, this is a topic that I know is on a lot of people's minds, right? Russell Wilson, is right up there with Aaron Rodgers as the guy a lot of Bucs fans, want the team to trade for, right? You said it, just a moment ago, let Russ cook. It seems like he may be a little bit unhappy in Seattle right now. Kind of give a general description of kind of why these thoughts are coming together right now in some Bucs fans' minds.
Well, I think you pointed to it is the potential unhappiness. And for those that don't remember, you go back to the week following the Buccaneers winning Super Bowl 55, right? Russ was kind of making his way around the radio circuit, and you made some comments talking about how he wasn't real happy with his protection in Seattle, with his offensive line, and they really didn't do anything to address that or to help him. And he was running around, for his life again this past season. Had some issues there, and so I think it's a name that if the Seahawks are in a situation where you don't know how much longer Pete Carroll is going to be there, you kind of look at the team, and though they have some good players, they don't have the Legion of Boom style defense anymore. The running game is a big question. And outside of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, there really isn't a whole lot to offer there. So Russ is in a position in his career now where he won a Super Bowl really early, got back to another loss, and hasn't been there since. In fact, since they lost that Super Bowl to the Patriots, they haven't been out of the divisional round. So he may be trying to kind of Aaron Rodgers his way out of Seattle, and Tampa would be a perfect landing spot, which is where I think the dots end up getting connected, right? You have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Whether it stays that way, we don't know, just because Jensen and Cap are pending free agents, but you have an all-pro and worse. You got Donovan Smith, you got Ali Marpet. I think Jensen comes back, Kappa probably leaves. If that's the case, you have Aaron Stinney, who played really, really well in Kappa's absence. So you have that offensive line there already. Boom, you're set. Now you got your number one and Mike Evans. Does Chris Godwin come back? What's the running game look like? There's some questions around there. But then you also have a young core on the defensive side of the ball. So it's got the pieces for Russell Wilson to be able to come in and kind of make another run. And with the limited time that we have with Bruce Arians, the Bucs are going to have to go all in again if Bruce is going to win another championship or have the opportunity to win another championship before he hangs them up.
Yeah, and that's definitely two really interesting situations for different reasons, right? In the case of the Seahawks, like you said, they're kind of teetering on that line right now between like being or trying to be a playoff team and just going into a borderline full rebuild, right? And I think this all depends on what they do with Russell Wilson. And, you said it, James, much like in the case of Aaron Rodgers, he was unhappy with his situation in Green Bay. Russell Wilson's now saying, I don't really like the situation I'm in right now either. So I agree with you. Yes, I do think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be a team that is more ready to win now, right? I know one thing a lot of people have been pointing out is, I believe it was James, like 7 out of 8 Pro Bowlers that they had this season are coming back to the team, like fully guaranteed. The only guy who's a question mark is Ryan Jensen. A lot of people, hope and, in some ways assume he might come back to the team. But like you said, yeah, the Bucs are still kind of in that win now mode with Bruce Arians. Next year, honestly, might be his last season. We don't know. And before we start talking about draft capital and all these other different types of things, James, Russell Wilson, I believe he's 32 years old right now. How long do you think he would have left due to all of the injuries he's had? Because I know that would be a concern, is the amount of times he's been hit, some of these nagging injuries he may have due to getting hit so many stinking times. How many years do you think Russell Wilson has left in the tank?
I think if they can keep him protected, you're looking at a 4 to 5 year run with Russell Wilson. So the draft capital that you would spend, you would get beyond the years that would take, and still have Russell Wilson under center. Now, of course, you and I both know, your viewers know, anything can happen. One play can end a guy's career. But, if everything goes well, they keep him upright, he's not racing around running for his life the way he does in Seattle, you're looking at a relatively significant run that they could have Russell Wilson, some serious continuity at the quarterback position for a long extended period of time, with a proven commodity at the position, in a situation where this, honestly, if they make a trade for Russell Wilson, it could have a ripple effect on some of these free agents like Godwin, Gronk, Fournette. Some of these guys, you get a name and you get somebody of the caliber of Russell Wilson, you could, maybe not the Tom Brady discounts that they got, but you could see some discounts to stay in Tampa and continue to contend for a championship. So that's kind of like an initial domino that would have to fall before you see how the rest of the roster is constructed. But you would have Wilson for a solid amount of time where the Buccaneers would be contenders each and every year.
Absolutely. And I know people are going to, comment on, he might not be a fit for, Bruce Arians' system. James, I think me and you have both discussed this on our shows, with Russell Wilson, I believe, being a pretty decent fit overall, right, for Bruce Arians' offense, and also adding a different dynamic, right? And that is the mobility aspect of Russell Wilson, which is something Bruce Arians has rarely ever had an opportunity to work with in regards to a quarterback. I mean, Jameis Winston is one of the more recent, examples that comes to my mind, right? But usually Bruce Arians has a guy who's just kind of strictly a pocket passer. If he were to come to Tampa, it would add even more variations and elements to the offense that could make it even more dynamic. So there's a lot of positives to be marked here, James, but the two questions that are obvious questions that are going to come up. Number one is price tag, and number two is the Seahawks' actual willingness to trade Russell Wilson. So let's first talk about price tag, right? What would a potential Russell Wilson to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trade look like in terms of draft and maybe even player compensation?
I think you're looking at probably 3 years of first round picks. And I say 3 years, that's the bare minimum, because they already pick at the bottom of the first round this year. You bring in Russell Wilson, you're picking at the bottom of the first round for the next couple of years. So it's going to take at least 3. Then you're going to have a combination of second day and third day picks, probably 2 second rounders and maybe a conditional third that can become a second. If the Buccaneers make it to a Super Bowl within the first 3 years, you could do a conditional 4th round pick for 2026, right? You could stretch this out and say, if the Buccaneers get to not even win, if they get to a Super Bowl in Russ's first 3 years, that moves up to a 2nd round pick in 2026 or whatever the case may be. So you're looking at a very hefty price tag in the early rounds of the draft in order to bring in Russell Wilson. Now, people are going to scoff at that. Why would you give up that many first round draft picks? Well, as we see year in and year out, first round draft picks are not a sure thing. Number 1 draft picks are not a sure thing. And it's going to be really difficult for the Buccaneers to be in a situation, even if they bring in a Jimmy Garoppolo, it's going to be hard for the Bucs to find themselves in a position where they're drafting high enough in the next 3 years to get someone that would be of Russell Wilson's caliber. So it's kind of you got to weigh your options, right? Would you rather have, no first round picks for the next 3 years, but be a playoff and championship contender for 5? Or would you rather hold on to that draft capital and basically you're buying a scratch off lottery ticket? You might get $1, but you might get 10 million. You just don't know. Bird in the hand's worth two in the bush, in my opinion. So if I'm the Buccaneers, I'm more than willing to start the conversation at 3 firsts and 2 day 2 picks with, just as the starting point. And then we can continue to get into that conversation. If they want a player, if they want a Kyle Trask, they want someone that they can bring in and develop and maybe turn into a starter down the road. You could throw him in there. They're not going to get rid of an Antoine Winfield Jr. or a Mike Evans or a Devin White in order to get Russell Wilson. But I think that's where the conversation has to start, is a combination of first and second round picks, at least 5, just to make sure that you're on the phone.
Yeah, and obviously this is a very rare example of this mentality working. But, like the Rams, they haven't made a first-round pick since 2016. They're in the Super Bowl right now. And like I said, teams don't normally do that, right? They usually do like making their draft picks. But we have one recent case that proves that, like, hey, you don't have to spend a first-round draft pick really any year for 5 years, and you can still be a championship contending team. So it's not, I think, crazy to say that would be a reasonable price tag, because look, franchise quarterbacks do not come up very often, right? And Russell Wilson, obviously 5 years of a guy of his caliber would cost a hefty amount of draft capital and potentially player capital as well to acquire his services. James, we didn't even mention the contract. Obviously that would have to be something that is done. Do you think, just real quick, it would affect the Buccaneers potentially bringing back any of their free agents? Or do you think, like with the way teams do certain salary cap maneuvers now with void years and kind of kicking the can down the road, that wouldn't be much of an issue?
Well, I mean, I had Evan Klosky of 10 Tampa Bay on Locked On Bucs on Wednesday's episode, and he said if you trade for a Russell Wilson, you're probably not bringing back Chris Godwin. The money just isn't there. I am of the opinion that, like you mentioned, with the way teams do these contracts, and anytime you have Jason Light and John Spytek in that front office working these numbers, I have faith they can figure it out. You may miss out on bringing back a free agent. You may not have the opportunity to bring back Leonard Fournette or Rob Gronkowski. I think Chris Godwin is still a priority. I think if the Bucs bring in Russell Wilson, Gronk would be more likely to return to play with him rather than, with a Kyle Trask or a Blaine Gabbert of that sort. So the cap is a myth. It's a legend. They can manipulate it any way they want, and they can figure it out. Again, if you're going all in, you're going all in, and you can kick the can down 10, 15 years, as we've seen the Saints do. Eventually you have to pay the piper, but I would rather be a championship contender for 5 years and worry about that. That's 2031's problem, not 2022's.
Exactly. I think I agree with you there. In regards to like the cap not really being a problem for NFL teams anymore, and the different ways you can manipulate it and whatnot. I think they could make his contract work, but like you said, they may run the risk of losing another important piece. But again, if it's to get a guy for 5 years of the caliber of Russell Wilson, I think that's something you consider. But James, the one thing we haven't even talked about yet is it takes two to tango, right? And I mentioned this in the Aaron Rodgers video, how the Packers have point blank came out and said, no, we don't want to trade Aaron Rodgers. Of course they don't, right? He's their franchise quarterback, and that is what Russell Wilson is to the Seattle Seahawks. So James, do you think Seattle even is thinking about the idea of trading Russell Wilson right now, even if he is kind of talking up a little bit, saying, hey, I don't really like the situation I'm in? Or do you feel like they are more willing to get a deal done here?
Well, as the immortal Ted DiBiase said, and shout out to any of your viewers to get that reference, everybody has a price. It doesn't hurt to call and ask. And if they know that Wilson's unhappy and he's got the 2 years left on his deal right now, he could walk for free. He could walk away from that franchise and put himself in a Tom Brady situation where he handpicks where he goes and can contend for a championship. If teams are calling now, offering a handful of draft picks and then some in order to get a deal done, take what you can while you can before he walks out the door for absolutely nothing. So I think they're in a position where they will listen, and they realize that they may be losing him regardless. probably want to strike while the iron is hot. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility at all that the Seahawks do trade Russell Wilson. If it's not this offseason, it'll be next offseason, because all signs tend to point towards Russell Wilson leaving in free agency and being a high price guy there. And then Seattle's kind of stuck, with nothing to try to help rebuild this franchise in exchange.
There you go. So, James, I have one final question for you, my man. And I really, we talked about a lot here, right? A lot of reasons as to why a trade could happen, some reasons as to why a trade could not happen for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At the end of the day, do you think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will or will not trade for Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson?
Given all the quarterback options right now, I feel that if they were to make a trade for a quarterback, Russell Wilson is the guy that they want, but I don't think it's the guy that they get. Okay. If that makes sense. I think if they make a trade, it ends up being Jimmy Garoppolo, just because the price will be so low, because both parties, Garoppolo and the 49ers, want to facilitate something. But crazier things have happened. So if they can get something done, I think Russell Wilson is the number one guy on their list that they want to go after. I just think that it will reach a point that the cost is too high and the Buccaneers have to walk away.
I agree with you in regards to saying that, Russell Wilson, I believe, is probably going to be at the top of the Bucs list. And in regards to, like, Aaron Rodgers, if the Packers don't want to trade him, then that's not going to happen. The Bucs might not even engage in that dialogue. I think that there could be some level of dialogue between the Bucs and the Seahawks regarding a Russell Wilson trade. Do I think it gets done at the end of the day? Much like what you said there, I don't think so. I think the Buccaneers might go the route of trading for a veteran quarterback, like you said, Jimmy Garoppolo. There's some other options out there as well, or signing somebody in free agency. Now, is it impossible? Heck no, James. Nothing is impossible, right? The Bucs had Tom Brady for 2 years. Like, every pipe dream that people think of now, I think there's a possibility of it happening, because I don't count out anything anymore, my man. But, we will see. I'm not going to say it's like a 20% chance of happening, nothing along those lines. But you know what? I'll give it like a 5 to 10% chance, which I think is fair, I think, right?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, we will have to wait and see, right? But, James, I want to thank you so much for being on, man. Hopefully this is the start of the first of many times here on the channel, as we have a lot of topics to cover in this offseason. And to everybody watching this video, let us know your thoughts. Do you think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will or will not trade for Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson? Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below. And while you're down there, go subscribe to James's channel, the Locked On Bucs podcast. They produce an episode every single day. Is that right, James?
That in 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, there is an episode up on YouTube and free and available on all podcasting platforms as well.
Absolutely. So go check them out. They produce amazing, amazing content. And also go check out James's articles on BucsNation.com, where there's even more Bucs content for you to digest. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed, and we will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.